Almighty God, we gather here today in humility and solemn purpose, mindful of the responsibilities entrusted to us as stewards of our nation, our institutions, and our people. At a time when the world faces uncertainty, division, calamities, conflict, and rapid change, we seek your divine guidance as we reflect on the urgent task of building and sustaining national resilience. Grant us wisdom that sees beyond temporary interests, courage that does not yield to fear or complacency, and integrity that remains steadfast even in moments of adversity. Bless our leaders, experts, and speakers who will share their knowledge and experiences today. May their words enlighten minds, strengthen resolve, and inspire collective action grounded in justice, compassion, accountability, and love of country. May this gathering renew in each of us a deeper commitment to service, cooperation, preparedness, and responsible leadership. Help us become instruments of stability and hope for future generations, especially for those who are most vulnerable and most affected by hardship and uncertainty. As we begin this MAP General Membership Meeting, may respect guide our discussions, wisdom shape our decisions, and patriotism strengthen our shared purpose. We entrust all our endeavors to your grace and protection. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Hayang magiliw, helas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyang ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigiw, sa dagat at tutok, sa simoy at sa langit ang pagaw, ay hinatang tulang awit sa pagayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magtitinig. Luman ang araw ng walhaging pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hindi kaya ng pagkay mga api, at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
For the President's Report, may I now call on the President of the Management Association of the Philippines, who is also the President and COO of Dito CME Holdings Corporation. Please welcome Dr. Donald Lim.
Our distinguished guest speakers, Secretary Oban, our GOHAS, our esteemed partners from government, the diplomatic community, the academe, the media, fellow MAP members, MAP past presidents, dear friends, welcome. I know we're starting a bit early. We have a very long program ahead of us. So we will get through with we'll finish off all the preliminaries in the first 30 minutes so that we can give a good amount of time for our entire agenda. Okay. So on behalf of the MAP Board of Governors, it is both an honor and a privilege to open today's GMM, centered on a theme that could not be more urgent or more relevant: building and sustaining national resilience. In a world defined by uncertainty, economic shifts, technological disruption, and geopolitical complexity, resilience is no longer optional. It is the defining capability of nations, institutions, and leaders who aspire not only to endure, but to lead. We extend our sincere appreciation to the MAP Committee on National Resilience, ably chaired by MAP Governor Rafi Alunan, for bringing this important conversation to life as part of our Big Issues series. Let me now share with you some of the key initiatives that reflect how MAP continues to shape leadership and national progress. So, update for the membership. Okay? So, first, the search for the MAP Management Person of the Year 2026 is now underway. This is more than an award, it is a recognition of leadership that transforms industries and uplifts the nation. I encourage each of you to nominate individuals whose impact deserves to be recognized and emulated. Should you need more assistance, please get in touch with our secretariat. Second, I hope and I invite you all to be there to be part of the most anticipated gathering, the 24th MAP International CEO Conference. Please block off September 8th. This year, the theme is In the Age of Flux, Scaling the Next Inflection Points, which challenges us to rethink leadership in a time when change is constant and disruption is the norm. What does leadership look like in such an age? It is leadership that thinks in decades, not quarters, leadership that builds institutions, not just earnings, and leadership that sets directions rather than reacts to it. This conference is designed to do exactly that, to set the intellectual tone and to serve as a reference point, and hopefully to inspire leaders to rise above the noise of the moment. On June 30, we will also hold the second MAP KPMG Technology Summit in partnership with RG Manabat and Company. As AI reshapes industries at unprecedented speed, this summit will equip our members with fellow C-suite executives with critical insights into both the risks and the immense opportunities ahead. My thanks to the Technology Committee, co-chaired by Bong Paloma and Ted Sumulong, for leading this initiative. Equally important is our investment in the next generation of leaders. We proudly recognize the participants of the 6th SGV MAP Next Gen CEO Transformative Leadership Program, beginning this June. Over 6 months, these high-potential leaders will be immersed in a journey of mentorship, learning, and transformation, preparing them to lead with vision, courage, and purpose. MAP's reach continues to grow beyond Metro Manila. Last April 23, we successfully held our 6th MAP General Membership Meeting and Economic Briefing in Cebu, with Dr. Shell Habito and IBPA President Jack Madrid as speakers, bringing together leaders and members from across regions. This is part of our ongoing commitment to make MAP more inclusive, more accessible, and more representative of the nation's economic landscape. We had 148 attendees, including 23 Cebu-based members, 16 members from Manila, 13 Cebu-based inductees, and 96 guests from the area. 6 Cebu-based new members could not join, but they have already submitted their signed oath of membership. Hence, we now have a total of 19 new members from Cebu, and this increased the number of Cebu-based MAP members by 26%, from 72 to 91. And we will go further. This year, we will also hold 1 GMM each in Western Visayas and in Mindanao, strengthening our engagement in Southern Philippines and supporting broader, more inclusive economic development. Our next new regional GMM will take place in Iloilo on July 31 in partnership with the Iloilo Economic Development Foundation. I encourage you to nominate colleagues and leaders from the region to join MAP as we continue to expand our community of change makers. On May 15, this Friday, we will hold the 19th MAP Golf Cup for CSR at Wakwak Golf and Country Club. So more than a sporting event, it is a meaningful opportunity to support MAP's programs in health, education, and food security. Your participation, whether as a player or sponsor, makes a difference. So we have 2 more days. Those who can play golf, I hope that you can join us there. In response to the accelerating pace of technological change, we will soon launch a strategic AI leadership webinar series in partnership with the Analytics and AI Association of the Philippines. This monthly learning platform will help our members navigate the evolving AI landscape with clarity and confidence. At the same time, we are deepening our understanding on critical sectors. Through the Energy 101 series, the MAP Energy Committee, chaired by Ronald Valles, is equipping members with foundational insights into energy pricing, policies, and systems so that our discussions and advocacies are grounded in knowledge and guided by facts. At our board meeting this morning, the MAP board approved the MAP advocacy for Pinoy Wave. So we've been talking about the Hallyu Wave of Korea and how it changed the world. And we said, wait a minute, Filipinos are more creative. And therefore, this Pinoy Wave initiative aims to transform our creative industries from talent export model to an industry export model by addressing fragmentation, underfunding, and a lack of export strategy. MAP will leverage its management expertise to bridge the gap between creative talent and business acumen, acting as an execution partner with government bodies like the DTI and the Philippine Creative Industries Development Council. This immediate strategy involves a phased approach, starting with stakeholder engagement before formalizing government partnerships. Our GMM on August 12 will act as a teaser or press release for a concert featuring one or two P-pop groups to generate initial interest. Also, at our meeting this morning, the MAP board also approved the development of our MAP hymn or anthem. The MAP hymn or anthem aims to inspire leadership and foster a stronger sense of identity for all our members. The plan is in place now, and it will be performed by the MAP governors and the committee chairs and vice chairs, and we will have a serious recording of this, including any members who can sing. So you can audition also later on outside. After today's GMM, may I ask all committee chairs and vice chairs who are here to stay for just 15 minutes as we will give you a briefing on the MAP anthem. I joined last weekend, so I just came back yesterday, in Boracay for the 106th Council meeting of the ASEAN-BAC and the second ASEAN-BAC retreat. And I was given a chance to pitch our proposed ASEAN Management Association Network, or AMAN. AMAN is envisioned as a platform that will strengthen collaboration among ASEAN management organizations through the sharing of best practices, knowledge exchange, and capacity building. Through AMAN, we aim to promote stronger management and organizational practices across the region, facilitate engagement among leading management associations, and support the broader goals of the ASEAN Economic Community through a culture of management excellence. So if there's an ASEAN, we are creating AMAN, so it's a consortium of also the management networks or management organizations within ASEAN. So again, I have a long list, but these are just some of our events. I hope that all the members who are here continue to be active. Some reminders, if you have not yet received your copy of the MAP directory, please claim it at the registration desk. It is only for MAP members, and yes, we do not sell it. It's only for members because people are asking if they can buy. And it's a directory of 1,300 members, CEOs, C-suite executives, no? Our next GMM on June 10 will be focusing on sustaining energy security. I encourage you to mark your calendars and continue engaging in these important conversations. As we move forward, I invite all of you to stay connected through our Viber channels, email updates, our website, and the MAP memo. And let me end, as we start our agenda for this afternoon, let me end with this thought. Resilience is not built in moments of comfort. It is forged in terms of challenge through leadership that is bold, collaborative, and anchored in purpose. Together, let us continue to build not only stronger organizations, but a stronger Philippines. Thank you for your presence and for your continued commitment to the MAP.
At this point, we will now have the 10-minute CAMAX time. CAMAX is MAP's campaign against malnutrition and child stunting. May I now call on the Executive Director of the Rise Against Hunger, who will talk about their own advocacy against malnutrition. Please welcome on stage Mr. Jomar Fleras.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here. Today, I'll be talking about our flagship program, the Soil to School program. So, Rise Against Hunger, we are an international organization. We are a member of the International Confederation of Rise Against Hunger, and I operate the Philippine office. We are also a member of the Global Food Banking Network. We're the first Philippine member of GFN, and we operate 4 food banks as well as collaborate with other nonprofits. Okay, so right now, about 7.5 million Filipinos experience hunger in the first quarter of 2025. About 26.7% of children are considered stunted. When you say stunted, it doesn't just mean that they're bansot, but stunting leads to mental retardation. So just imagine a third of Filipino children are functionally mentally retarded, and they're supposed to be the next generation of Filipinos. So, and that usually leads to intergenerational stunting and poverty. And then what is more alarming is that 95 children die daily because of hunger and malnutrition. So how do we address this problem? We have this next slide. The Soil to School program. So in the Soil to School program, we integrate both the concept of regenerative agriculture and school feeding programs. So we feed about 10,000 children daily from produce of farmers. So we take care not just of the children, but the farmers as well. And when you say regenerative agriculture, we just don't think about sustainable agricultural practice. We take care of the whole ecosystem so that the soil will be providing us with produce even up to different generations. Next. So we have different programs at the Nueva Vizcaya Agriculture Terminal or NVAT. We have this, we established a food bank wherein vegetable farmers can trade their unsold or surplus vegetables with other shelf-stable items like canned goods, noodles, and the vegetables that we're able to barter with them are then given to 10 schools, which are able to reach about 5,000 school children. So they take that home, so eventually we're able to reach about 20,000 individuals in Nueva Vizcaya. Our plan this year is to replicate this program in different trading stations all over northern Luzon. We have also a farm in Magdalena, Laguna, which is a showcase farm wherein we showcase regenerative agriculture, and the produce of that farm goes to our various feeding programs. And then, now, how can you make a difference? Well, I'm here to pitch our program. You can contact us, Rise Against Hunger Philippines. We are on Facebook, and our website is philippines.riseagainsthunger.org. And you can organize volunteering programs, employee engagement programs, and donations. So that ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
For the presentation of new MAP members for induction, we are pleased to announce that this afternoon we are inducting 26 new MAP members who will increase MAP's total membership from 1,331 to 1,357. May I now read the names of the inductees? Mr. Wilhelm Bolton Bolly, COO of the Hospitality Management Division of the Area Development Office for the Philippines of Best Western Hotels. Sponsors, Consul General Isam Eldebs and Mr. Al Pandillo. Next in line, we have Mr. Jeffrey Calderon, COO of Huawei Philippines Digital Power. Sponsors, Mr. Al Pandillo and Secretary Rene Almendras. Next, we have Mr. Leo Capinpin, President of IBM Philippines. Sponsors, Mr. James Velasquez and Mr. Al Pandillo. Next in line, we have Miss Abigail Casanova, President of SB Finance Inc. Sponsors, Mr. Nonoy Kimbo and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next in line, we have Mr. Tito Castro, Titos, Managing Director and Philippine Country Chair of Total Global Services Philippines. Sponsors, Mr. Al Pandillo and Secretary Rene Almendras. Next in line, we have Mr. Kang Kevin Ko, CEO of A-Time Post Inc. Sponsors, Captain Stan Nang and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next, we have Mr. Bryce Pua Ku, Senior Managing Director and Philippine Country Head of CVC Capital Partners. Sponsors, Mr. Wilson Tan and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next in line, we have Mr. Chand Ravi Daryanani, President of Classic Characters of Canadian Manufacturing. Sponsors, Miss Natalia Peña and Mr. Fern Peña. Next in line, we have Miss Patricia Maria De Leon Escaler, Papat, President and COO of All Asian Countertrade Inc. Sponsors, Mr. Al Panlilio and Secretary Rene Almendras. Next in line, we have Mr. John Emil Eugenio, COO of CNE Publishing. Sponsors, Mr. Raul Villegas and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next in line, we have Mr. Joseph Daniel B. Ferido Joseph, co-founder and chief sales officer of Blackwall Industries. Sponsors, Dr. Donald Lim and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next in line, we have Mr. Benjamin Nang Gokingyok Jr., VP for Corporate Development of Primal Enterprises Corporation. Sponsors, Miss George Carlos and Mr. Mark Roca. Next in line, we have Miss Bettina Victoria Florete Goriseta, Bettina, Strategic Projects Lead of Lumina One Corporation. Sponsors, Miss Natalia Peña and Mr. Fern Peña. Next in line, we have Engineer Rainor Garcia Halmandre, President and CEO of Quantity Solutions Inc. Sponsors, Mr. Raul Villegas and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next in line, we have Mr. Carlo Enrico P. Lazatin, Carlo, President and CEO of DES Financing Corporation. Sponsors, Ms. Maricar Castillo Reyes and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next in line, we have Ms. Bridget Carmel C. Lapasaran Lim, Bridge, Senior Vice President and COO of Topline Business Development Corporation. Sponsors, Mr. Eugene Lapasaran Lim and Mr. Al Pandillo. Next in line is Miss Chrissy Lim Legaspi, Country Head of Operations and Head of ESG of ST Telemedia Global Data Centers Philippines. Sponsors, Mr. Mike Makatangay and Miss Jane Lobos. Next in line is Miss Beatriz I. Lim, Bea, President and CEO of Team Asia. Sponsors, Mr. Al Panlilio and Miss Monette Eturalde Hamlin. Next, we have Attorney Constance Marie C. Lim, First Vice President and CFO of Topline Business Development Corporation. Sponsors, Mr. Eugene Eric Lapasaran Lim and Mr. Alfredo S. Panlilio. Next, we have Mr. Felino James Marcelo, President and CEO of Maybank Philippines, Inc. Sponsors, Mr. Al Panlilio and Secretary Rene Almendras. Next in line, we have Mr. Arthur Vincent Yu Ong, Partner, Audit Services of Reyes Takandong and Company. Sponsors, Mr. Al Panlilio and Miss Mildred Ramos. Next in line, we have Mr. Antonio S. Payumo Tonito, VP for Strategic Investments of First Balfour Inc. Sponsors, Mr. Al Panlilio and Secretary Rene Almendras. Next in line is Mr. Diosdado Chua Salang Jr., President and CEO of Discovery Capital Finance Corporation. Sponsors, Mr. Sandeep Chantiramani and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next in line, we have Mr. Walter So, President and Managing Director of Hewlett Packard Enterprise Philippines. Sponsors, Mr. James Velasquez and Mr. Al Panlilio. Next in line, Architect Michael P. Torres, Founder, President and CEO of Archie Global Inc. Sponsors, Mr. Cliff Iala and Mr. Al Panlilio. And last but not the least is Ms. Ofek Venetianer, Head of Israel Economic Mission to the Philippines. Sponsors, Mr. Mike Makatangay and Ambassador Dana Kirsch. At this point, we would like to call on the MAP President, Dr. Donald Lim, to lead the induction of the new MAP members. Please all rise to add solemnity to the occasion.
As you all know, every MMB member goes through a very rigorous process, no? So around 3 months, I think, no? So we check all your papers. It goes through a membership committee, it goes through the board, and it goes through the entire membership. So all of us are hereby approving your membership and to the Management Association. So now, so as you take your oath, no? Okay, so please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do hereby solemnly pledge that I will perform well and faithfully, to the best of my ability, my duties as a regular member in order to contribute to the achievement of the objectives of the Management Association of the Philippines. So help me God. So congratulations and welcome to MAP.
Welcome our MC and moderator. He is the former press secretary and presidential spokesman, a columnist of the Philippine Star, co-host of the legal show Abogado ng Bayan, Bilyonaryo News Channel, COO of Silangan Mindanao Mining, the former SVP for Public and Regulatory Affairs of Philex Mining, Managing Director of the MVP Group Media Bureau, the Director of Government and Public Affairs of Metro Pacific Investments Corporation, Chairman and President of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines, Governor of the Philippine Constitution Association, Governor of Manila Overseas Press Club, Governor of ASEAN Law Association, and MAP Governor for 2025 to 2026. A big hand please for Attorney Mike Toledo.
Okay, I think we're all settled down and I hope you had enjoyed your lunch. A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat. Mayong udto kaninyong tanan. I'm Mike Toledo and I will be your MC again now. This is not the Management Man of the Year Awards because as I've said about a few months ago, that was the last time I'm doing it. So just to make sure you don't get confused, this is our GMM, Building and Sustaining National Resilience. And there is no truth to the rumor being peddled by my dear friend and kababayan, Secretary Rene Almendras, that I am doing this again for the second time because if you remember, the GMM a few months ago, I also emceed, moderated, and hosted it because I am given a fat talent fee by Arnold. Please, that is not true. As you all know, I am the best MC, moderator, money cannot buy, for the simple reason that I am free. Wala bang palakpak dyan? Alam mo yung Management Association, rather the Management Man of the Year Awards, 20 years yata yun. Pero ang binigay lang naman sa akin ni Arnold, every year, 12 years, Macallan Sherry Oak. Which for me is more than enough to pay for my services. Anyway, really good to see all of you. And, Mark Twain once said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Now, this quote, in my view, fits modern political and economic upheaval here in the Philippines, where you see a senator running away from the NBI, in the country and globally. We have inflation, trade wars, populism, technology disruption, geopolitical conflict, Ukraine, war in Iran, etc. But, ladies and gentlemen, the underlying pattern keeps resurfacing. Fear, inequality, power struggles, and we saw that recently in the Senate, and rapid changes which overwhelms all our institutions. Now today, ladies and gentlemen, we take a respite from all of that and we go positive. That's one thing good about the MAP. We go positive. And we discuss in your GMM today the important theme of building and sustaining national resilience. Now more than ever, its importance and relevance is at the forefront. So with that, again, I'd like to thank Secretary Rene and President Donald. Congratulations again to the new MAP members. Welcome to the wonderful, exciting, colorful world of the MAP. And believe you me, don't take my word for it. Experience it, feel it, and you will realize that I am just echoing the truth. And I would just again congratulate the new members because thanks to you, the average age of the MAP members has gone down. So give yourselves a warm round of applause, the new members. Maraming salamat po. Now, in line with the MAP policy, in the interest of time, we will dispense with the lengthy introduction of our speakers, who, by the way, anyway, are well known. So their profiles will be flashed on the screen, and I would like to remind the speakers that you are given 10 minutes each for your presentations. Let us now proceed to our first speaker, and he has just recently been appointed, so he is quite new to the position, but definitely not new to public service. I have known him during the time of President Aquino when the MVP group and MVP and I would visit the Armed Forces of the Philippines for several projects involving the armed forces and the private sector. So let us now listen to our first speaker. Please welcome National Security Advisor of the Philippines, who will talk about national resilience framework. Please welcome Secretary Eduardo S.L. Oban Jr. Palakpakan po natin.
Mayor Francisco Javier Zamora, the Mayor of San Juan City and President, Metro Manila Council, National President of the League of Cities of the Philippines, Mr. Donald Lim, MAP President and President and COO of Dito CME Holdings Corporation, Ms. Marian Hontiveros, MAP Vice President, former Secretary Maria Antonia Yulo Loizaga, Special Envoy of the President for Disaster Risk Reduction and Management, former Secretary Rafael M. Alunan III, former Secretary of DILG and MAP Governor, former Secretary Rogelio L. Singson, former Secretary of DPWH and Director, Engineering and Development Corporation of the Philippines and MAP past President, Attorney Benedicta Du Baladad, Founding President and CEO, Du Baladad and Associates and MAP past President, Vice Admiral Alexander Patino Pama, Arise Global Board Member, Consultant for Disaster Resilience, SM Prime Holdings Incorporated, Mr. Butch Mailey, President, Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, Mr. Jesus Carlos Villaseñor, Chair and CEO, Pasha Transprocure and Pasha Shared Services, Mr. Jomar Fleras, Executive Director, Rise Against Hunger, Mr. Oscar Toralba, Vice Chair, MAP Business Agribusiness Committee, Chair and CEO, Town Holdings Corporation, representatives from the different national government agencies present, distinguished officers of the Management Association of the Philippines, and other guests, ladies and gentlemen, good noon. Leadership in action is best tested in times of disruption. As challenges converge, our risk is clear. Build national resilience and lift the nation by turning every shock into a source of strategic strength. In an age of converging disruptions, multiple shocks do not merely coexist. They compound, cascade, and interact with one another in ways that amplify the damage of each. As we confront converging disruptions and rethink prevention, preparedness, and shared responsibility, the question is clear. Can we act before our systems reach the breaking point? As shown, the discussion is structured around converging disruptions, prevention and preparedness, current initiatives in national resilience, and strategic transformation through shared responsibility. Climate change is a national security and business continuity issue. Storms are intensifying more rapidly. We continue to face drought and water stress. Our agricultural sector, and by extension, our food security, is accurately exposed to these shifts. Sea level rise presents a long-duration threat to our coastal communities that sustain our economic activity. A major rupture, or the big one, would have impact severe enough to reshape the nation itself. The Philippines has experienced significant data breaches and system compromises that should serve as warning signals. A relatively small investment by an adversary in the cyberspace can produce a disproportionate disruption to critical national systems. Disinformation and coordinated influence operations are now a standard instrument in the toolkit, seeking to destabilize, divide, and weaken adversaries without firing a single shot. Cognitive warfare erodes the very substrate in which all other forms of crisis response depend. That is public trust. The Philippines also faces internal vulnerabilities that function as force multipliers for external shocks. These include corruption, which weakens institutions. Policy uncertainty raises risk, shortens planning horizons, and deters private capital from supporting long-term security needs. Structural constraints also amplify the speed, scale, and impact of external disruptions. Trust is the invisible infrastructure of institutions. Erosion of trust weakens collective capacity, and in crisis, it becomes a strategic constraint. Effects of recent developments, such as the US-Israel war on Iran, do not stay local for long anymore. They now spill over borders. The Philippines remains exposed to external shocks, dependent on imported rice, coal-fired energy, and undersea cables that carry nearly all our international data. From food and power to digital connectivity, critical systems rely on supply chains and infrastructures beyond our direct control. Indeed, the greatest risk we face is not any single external threat or internal weakness, but their convergence into systemic fragility. All these demand long-term and coordinated resilience planning. Having established these realities, the imperative is the architecture of prevention. Early actions taken while it can still matter. The first imperative is horizon scanning and early warning. The Philippines needs robust, institutionalized mechanisms for monitoring the full spectrum of risks and for translating that monitoring into decision-relevant intelligence for leaders at all levels. This is a governance function, and the private sector has a role to play. Through the rich real-time data your organizations generate on economic activity, consumer behavior, supply chains, and operational conditions. Second is the development of national endurance dashboards, systematic data-driven tools for monitoring how close we are to the critical thresholds. These dashboards should be living instruments, triggering decision protocols when indicators move toward threshold zones. Third, public-private coordination mechanisms must be institutionalized, not improvised in the heat of crisis. We have seen in every major disaster and emergency that the coordination between government and business works far better when it has been planned, practiced, and legally anchored before the crisis arrives. National resilience is firmly anchored in our national security policy and national security strategy. The NSP sets the strategic frame. It defines the national interest, threats, and overarching strategic objectives. The NSS operationalizes it through sector-specific strategies, interagency coordination, performance metrics, and the sequence initiatives that build national resilience capacity over time. The direction is clear. With you, momentum will accelerate. The three pillars of the national security strategy form interconnected foundations of national resilience. Safeguarding sovereignty and territory, strengthening a humane and resilient society, and fostering peace, unity, and social cohesion. Together, they enable the Philippines to remain secure, adaptive, and resilient amid evolving challenges. National resilience is strengthened through the effective leveraging of strategic alliances. Balikatan with the United States have grown in scale and complexity, reflecting a more integrated alliance, while EDCA enabled base development and enhanced domain awareness have significantly improved strategic coverage, particularly in the West Philippine Sea. Moreover, the Philippines continues to contribute constructively to ASEAN with renewed strategic confidence, carefully navigating an evolving regional landscape while supporting a rules-based order. Our participation in Squad and other minilateral arrangements reflects an appreciation that national resilience is strengthened through cooperative and complementary partnerships. PAC Silica, our critical minerals strategy, positions the country as a meaningful player in the global competition for materials, supporting clean energy and digital technology transitions. Supply chain resilience initiatives diversify our economic dependencies. Economic security corridors and innovation linkages are being developed to strengthen our position in the global value chains on more favorable terms. Through its partnership with the Tony Blair Institute, the National Security Council established the National Risk Assessment and Registry, a foundational tool that strengthens national resilience and institutional endurance by systematically identifying and prioritizing the risks most critical to the country's long-term stability. We are updating the National Crisis Management Core Manual for the whole of society crisis governance. This is advanced through joint strategic planning with the Office of Civil Defense to align frameworks, clarify command interfaces, and strengthen interoperability. In parallel, we are deepening engagements with Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, the National Resilience Council, and other partners to mobilize surge capabilities and reinforce national preparedness and resilience. The Management Association of the Philippines is uniquely positioned to help co-architect national resilience. Your diverse membership, organizational capacity, and credibility make you a key player, a convener in building a resilient public-private architecture. Secretary Alunan had shown us a model to build national resilience bottom-up. The community-based approach is innovative and inclusive, highlighting the importance of cultivating creative partnerships that advance locally driven solutions, promote sustainable growth, and reinforce national endurance. Looking ahead, we see clear opportunities for collaboration across key areas. Build for continuity, genuinely. Co-invest in a strategic petroleum reserve. Build a standing channel between business and government on strategic risk. Secure a seat in the Luzon Corridor and Pax Silica. Commit to a resilient standard that you publish and stand behind. We must understand that critical infrastructure protection must become a shared priority. Strategic communication through authoritative, credible, timely information that outcompetes disinformation in a crisis must be built and sustained. And the continuity of government and economy planning must be an active living discipline. In an era of converging disruptions, national survival hinges on decision speed and coordinated action, both of which must be built in advance across government, business, and society to move from reactive crisis response toward shared, enduring capabilities that sustain national resilience. A shift from dependency to strategic autonomy, building domestic capacity in energy, food, technology, and defense to reduce external exposure and preserve freedom of action, not autarky, but calibrated self-sufficiency where national continuity demands it. We aim in resilience by design, systems that anticipate disruption, maintain continuity, and convert stress into strategic advantage. From exposure to control, not merely suffering the consequences of global supply chain disruptions, but designing our systems so that we can manage, reroute, and adapt when those disruptions occur. From fragility to redundancy and resilience, building backup systems, alternative routes, reserve capacities, and institutional depth that ensure no single failure point can cascade into national breakdown. Turning stress into strategic strength to build systems that do not merely survive disruptions, but to emerge from it stronger. Organizations that have invested in crisis preparedness consistently outperform their peers in the aftermath of shocks because the investments they made in resilience translate into competitive advantage when the environment is disrupted. From reactive to anticipatory governance, expand our decision-making horizon from response to prevention, from recovery to foresight, and from managing yesterday's crisis to shaping tomorrow's environment. In conclusion, national security is a shared responsibility. The private sector must be a co-architect of resilience, building shared risk intelligence where government and business exchange threat insights and early warnings to act faster and more effectively. It means joint crisis response mechanisms, pre-planned, pre-exercised frameworks for how government and business will coordinate when a major disruption occurs. The Philippines has every asset it needs to make that transformation. We have geography, one of the most strategically significant in the world. We have young, resilient, and talented population. We have growing economy, which demonstrated capacity to absorb shocks and recover. We have alliances that when managed with skill, give us strategic depth. And we have a private sector represented by organizations like those in this room of extraordinary capability and reach. What we need is alignment between government strategy and private investment. His strategic edge is not inherited. It is built through shared commitment, disciplined institutions, and leaders who act before crisis force their hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I came here today not to brief you, but to enlist you. Because national resilience is not a government program. It is a whole of nation endeavor. And this project requires that what this room uniquely holds, leadership, capital, reach, and resolve to act before crisis leaves us no choice. The Philippines has faced harder moments and emerged stronger each time. I am confident that we can do so again, but not by waiting, rather by choosing now to move together toward higher ground. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Good day, everyone.
Let's give Secretary Oban another warm round of applause, please, for that very exhaustive presentation. And I'm very happy, Secretary Oban, that you mentioned Pax Silica, which is really a very important agreement entered into with the United States, because we know how important critical minerals are, and to make sure that the Philippines becomes a part of the critical minerals ecosystem. And of course, that's also recognition that we cannot rely on China on critical minerals and rare earths, which we all know China dominates rare earth mining as well as rare earth processing. But it was not done overnight. China planned this 30 years ago. Deng Xiaoping really planned it. They wanted to control rare earth mining and processing. That's why all the processing now is in China. That's why Pax Silica is indeed a very good initiative. Again, thank you so much, Secretary Oban. At this point, I'd like to call on a dear friend who has been very helpful when she was Secretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. She has been very helpful, and that is the reason why there is a resurgence in mining. And we all know how important mining is now. It's a low-hanging fruit that will actually uplift the economy. And we are so grateful that she held that position in the DNR. And now she is here to speak as a representative of the National Defense Secretary Gibot Teodoro, and she will talk on the NDRRMC Resilience Framework. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Special Envoy of the President for Disaster Risk Reduction and Management, Secretary Maria Antonia Yulo Loizaga. Tony, palakpakan po natin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. They very kindly have given me a podium. Otherwise, you may not be able to see me. To Dr. Donald L. Lim, President of the Management Association of the Philippines, our good friends, former Secretary Rafael Anunan and Mr. Mike Toledo, and esteemed members of the MAP Board, to my fellow speakers, Secretary Eduardo Oban, our National Security Advisor, Mayor Francisco Zamora, Mayor of San Juan City, and Dr. Jess Stanislao, Chair Emeritus of the Institute of Corporate Directors. To the panelists, Attorney Du Baladad, Mr. Butch Mailey, Vice Admiral Alex Pama, Secretary Rogelio Singson, Mr. Torralba, Mr. Villaseñor, and of course our good friend and my former colleague in the Cabinet, Secretary Jaime Bautista. Hello po. Other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of our Secretary of National Defense, Gilberto C. Teodoro Jr., we thank the MAP for this opportunity to discuss our work at the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or the NDRMC, and the Office of Civil Defense, or OCD, and its critical partnership with the private sector. As you well know, and as we have been so ably briefed, the Philippines is among the countries most exposed to multiple hazards and most at risk to disasters. Most of these hazards are natural, but others may be human-induced, biological, environmental, or technological. Climate change amplifies the threats we already face, and exposes us further to a complex and dynamic risk landscape. As His Excellency President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. stated at the 2024 Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, and I quote, "Our vision is clear: to reduce disaster risks and losses, and in doing so protect lives, livelihoods, and the social and economic assets that underpin our societies. To realize the President's vision, we need all hands on deck." The NDRMC and the OCD are mandated to prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. This comprehensive approach to risk reduction and management lies at the very foundation of our country's resilience. These mandates are in fact grounded in the Philippine Development Plan of 2023 to 2028, and as mentioned previously by our Secretary, the National Security Strategy of 2024. However, we have learned from experience that government cannot do this alone. In reality, both traditional and non-traditional threats to our security and resilient development rely deeply on critical collaboration with the private sector for its risk-informed core capabilities and investments, technical expertise, logistics networks, and access to innovation. This collaboration is vital to national resilience, especially climate and disaster resilience. We envision the NDRMC through the OCD as a bridge that facilitates, on the one hand, vertical coordination between the national government and our local government units, and on the other, horizontal coordination among government agencies with various functional expertise on reducing risk, ensuring development, and contributing to national security. In a similar vein, we are here with you today to share how the NDRMC and OCD can serve as a bridge between the Philippine government and critical partners, including the private sector. We therefore aim to institutionalize our collaboration in disaster risk reduction and management because we have evidence that it works, and we understand its potential contributions to nation building. A brief case in point is the experience during Super Typhoon Yolanda. At that time, we worked with the armed forces and the private sector to establish a system which provided situational awareness and tracking and directed logistics for over 4 dozen military and humanitarian agencies from at least 14 nations. One of the key lessons we learned during disasters of such scale is the critical importance of establishing a standard operating procedure with buy-in from all sectors. Another brief case in point is the experience during COVID-19 pandemic. Through Task Force T3 and the PhilPrep tripartite platform, among which the OCD, the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, or PDRF, and the Center for Disaster Preparedness were members, we found that structured public-private partnership produces better outcomes than ad hoc coordination. The key variables were a clear invitation from the government, defined roles, prearranged logistics networks, and both a coherent coordination and command structure. Drawing from these experiences, paid for in thousands of lives lost, and over 1 trillion pesos in loss and damage, I'm pleased to share that we are devising a new strategic framework for private sector engagement in disaster risk reduction and management. While we are in the early stages of this initiative, we are in active consultation already with some of you. We likewise invite all of you here to continue to help us in shaping it. We are not creating a new structure. Instead, we are formalizing and building on what already works, integrating existing networks into OCD's overall doctrine, strategy, and operations manuals so that they are ready before the next disaster strikes. This is because unlike COVID-19, where we had roughly 2 years to respond and adapt, other hazards will either develop rapidly or strike suddenly, such as a catastrophic earthquake or a tsunami. Therefore, we need to act now instead of improvising when the time comes. Ultimately, the end in view is to enable anticipatory action, facilitate targeted response, preserve critical functions during crises, and ensure early recovery to maintain the stability and security of the country. While we are still finalizing the policy architecture, that is the direction where we intend to go. You may ask what the private sector can do. There are several ways the private sector can contribute and help. Not every hazard has to become a disaster, and the private sector plays a role in prevention and preparedness as well. In every disaster, the essential emergency response consists of 3 primary elements: power, lift, communications. It can build and safeguard critical utilities and infrastructure, provide logistics and mobility for relief, deliver robust and redundant communications systems for situational awareness. Certain industries, such as construction, engineering, and mining, have core capabilities and equipment for search, rescue, and recovery operations. The retail sector can provide shelter and relief. Companies in the transport sector not only supplement mobility needs, even the maritime industry has seafarers, professionals who are skilled in emergency and crisis response. Conglomerates, highly skilled in enterprise risk management, can share their strategic foresight derived through advanced risk analytics to enhance prevention, preparedness, and recovery. These capabilities can be strategically aligned to complement and augment government resources. The role of the private sector, as you see, extends far beyond the donation and delivery of relief goods. You can be a strategic and proactive partner of the government in securing our country's resilient future. Regardless of which role you play, what we are asking is for you to work with us on this journey. You may also ask what we can do for the private sector. We also recognize that the partnership has to work both ways. Therefore, on our end, we are committed to reducing bureaucratic bottlenecks for our partners. We can coordinate with NDRMC member agencies to identify and create effective synergies. We can arrange to assist in securing personnel, facilities, and equipment deployed prior to and during disaster operations. We can work with you on establishing green lanes for the processing of humanitarian aid and on pre-identifying, registering, and deploying volunteer responders. We are already working with organizations such as the PDRF, for example, to strengthen the capabilities of our civilian airport facilities management to accommodate surges in cargo and personnel during humanitarian crisis. Through the OCD, therefore, we welcome partners' requests for assistance, including coordination support, information sharing, endorsement of humanitarian donations through our customs authorities, and formal emergency response team accreditation. These are just some of the ways we can assist our partners in the private sector, but we are very much open to hearing from you on what you further may need from us. We know business continuity is important to you and to the national economy. And we are aware that materials, supply chains, industrial processes, and personnel may be both exposed and vulnerable to hazards and other threats. We must, however, also be transparent about what we cannot do as a government. Given limited fiscal space and resource constraints, government logistics and transport assets will be prioritized for public relief operations. Strategic concerns, operational security, and immediate as well as long-term humanitarian benefit will always be paramount. This means not all offers for resources and services will be accepted when they are presented. Within these parameters, we have several criteria that guide our partnerships with the private sector. Prospective partners must locate themselves within the different phases of our DRRM framework, namely prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. They must also have an existing business continuity plan of their own, emergency response teams possibly, or disaster response structures, because we have found that pledges without capacity, however well-intentioned, cannot be relied on in times of crisis. Rapidity, resourcefulness, robustness, and redundancy of technological and human resources are critical. Prior involvement in disaster response and humanitarian efforts, such as, for example, in the P3 COVID Task Force or Super Typhoon Yolanda and other disasters, as well as investments in resilient infrastructure and airport systems readiness programs, are positive indicators of commitment. Relatedly, we look to corporate citizenship and the financial and operational stability to sustain partnership, possibly beyond the first 72 hours following a disaster, to address community and social resilience. Finally, before accreditation, all prospective partners must go through a vetting process. This includes screening for foreign-linked entities, particularly companies with ownership or operational ties to countries with interests that run counter to those of the Philippines. Entities seeking access to government facilities, communications infrastructure, or sensitive operational data under the guise of disaster partnership will also be flagged for additional review. In conclusion, we view the structured participation of the private sector across all phases of DRRM as essential and not merely optional. With your help, we can prevent a hazard from becoming a real disaster and better protect the lives and livelihoods of our people when disasters do strike. In that spirit, we look forward to working with you in building a safer and more resilient Philippines. Thank you and a pleasant day to all.
Thank you very much, Secretary Tony. Let's give her another warm round of applause, please. Alam niyo po, si Sec Tony, in my view, personifies really what PPP or Public-Private Partnership is all about. When she was then Secretary of the Environment and Natural Resources, she would be working closely with the Office of Civil Defense as well as with the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines when it comes to a lot of this recovery and relief operations during calamities, whether caused by nature or man-made. So, maraming salamat, Secretary Tony. Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I will call on a man who actually needs no introduction. But one thing I can tell you, he can drive the golf ball 350 yards. I've seen it. I've seen it. That is why I always support his golf tournaments. Anyway, to make the presentation on local government resilience framework, may I call on the President of the Metro Manila Council and National President of the League of Cities of the Philippines, Mayor of San Juan City, walang iba po, ang ating mahal na alkalde ng San Juan, Mayor Francisco Javier M. Zamora.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Na-pressure naman po ako kay Attorney Mike. Alam niyo po, no, kapag tinatanong ako anong handicap ko, sinasabi ko ang totoo, mataas pong handicap ko. Handicap 22. Dahil masipag po ako magtrabaho sa opisina, sa City Hall, hindi ako nakakapag-golf. Yan po ang totoo. No? So kung si Secretary Loizaga po nagpasalamat na may podium kanina, ako po nagpapasalamat na tinanggal po ito. Sapagkat minsan po ako na problema sa Malacanang. Isipin niyo po, sa araw na ako'y nanumpa bilang National President ng League of Cities of the Philippines, I had a very, very big problem. Yung kanila pong microphone, napakababa. Sobrang baba, kailangan kong yumuko. Tapos nung tinatanggal ko ho siya sa stand, nakapulupot ng 5 beses. So wala na akong choice. At ang presidente po nasa kanan ko. You know how I was speaking to the president? Nakayuko po ako the whole time. And it became a viral video which up to this day, we all laugh about. So, to our National Security Advisor, General Eduardo Oban, he had to leave already. To our Special Envoy for Disasters Reduction and Management, and the former DNR Secretary, Maria Antonia Loizaga. To our former Finance and Socio-Economic Planning Secretary and NED Director General, Jesus Estanislao. To my dear friend and fellow Lasallian, pasensya na po kayo kung kayo po ay taga-ibang paaralan, taga-ibang universidad, nag-champion po ang Lasal, hindi lang sa basketball, pati po sa volleyball. Animo Lasal. So to those who have studied in other schools, wag kayo mag-alala, may next UAP season pa naman. And I say he is my friend because, one, he's a fellow Lasallian and ang kanya pong background ay tugma din sa mga pinagdadaanan ko araw-araw, being a former DLG Secretary. Palakpan po natin, Secretary Rafi Alunan. To all esteemed members of the Management Association of the Philippines, headed by President Donald Lim and Vice President Manon Tiveros, former Secretary of the DPWH, isa rin pong Lasalista, kasama ko rin pumapalakpak para sa Green Archers, of course, Secretary Babe Singson, former DOTR Secretary who held office in San Juan for a long time. Ang laking natulong sa amin lungsod, Secretary Jimmy Bautista. Ang kasama ko po sa Metro Manila Council because he has been appointed as the General Manager of the MMDA, General Nicolas Torre III. Nandito po. Sa lahat po ng nandito ngayon, isang magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat. We have long been taught that national security is the exclusive domain of the central government. But look at the world today. Look at the price of fuel at your local pumps and prices of consumer goods. Feel the anxiety of the business enterprises, small, medium, and big. Families of our OFWs, the farmers and fishermen, all that impact on our cities and municipalities. National security is defined as a state or condition wherein the world and people's welfare, well-being and ways of life and its institutions, territorial integrity, sovereignty, and core values are protected and enhanced. As you can see, we do have a large role to play. The hard truth is that local government resilience is a national security imperative. We're living in an era of converging threats. We're no longer dealing with isolated bad days or seasonal storms. We are facing synchronized assault on our stability from both external and internal forces. If the national government is a country's sword, the LGU is its shield. National security fails if the local community collapses. Why is our role now a matter of national survival? Because the threats we face are designed to exploit the weak links in our local systems. First, look at the external pressure. The ongoing war in Iran is not just a distant conflict. It is a direct hit to our local economies. As global shipping lanes are choked and energy markets fluctuate, our food and fuel become chips in a high-stakes geopolitical game. When a maritime blockade, thousands of miles away, stops a construction project in your city or doubles the price of bread, that is a security breach. Second, Look at the internal siege. We are staring down the barrel of a severe El Nino season, predicted to be among the most punishing in our history. This is not just a weather event. It is a threat to our water supply, our power grid, and our social order. When these threats converge, when a global supply chain collapse meets a local water crisis, the result is social friction. If a city cannot feed itself or provide water for its people, the nation is defeated from within without a single shot being fired. Resilience is our strongest line of defense. To lead this charge, we cannot maintain a business as usual attitude. We cannot face 21st century threats with a 20th century bureaucracy. We must retool our LGUs into agile, shock-resistant machines. For example, resilience cannot be a lonely desk in the disaster office. It must be the heartbeat of every department. Engineering must build for climate extremes. Health must prep for heat wave surges. Budgeting must prioritize rainy day liquidity over cosmetic projects. We must overhaul our systems to allow for standby contracts. We cannot afford to act after the fact. We need pre-negotiated triggers that bypass bottlenecks in times of crisis. Every LGU must conduct an inventory of local assets. Do we know where every private generator is? Do we have a registry of every working well? If we do not know what we have, we cannot deploy them when the grid goes dark. However, a resilient government is useless if its citizens are passive victims. We must bridge the gap between LGU resilience and community resilience. We must transform our residents from clients of aid into partners in security. And here are some useful guidelines. Support community resilience initiatives. We must empower our barangay leaders to map their own strengths. Every street has a retired nurse, a mechanic, a solar hobbyist, or a store owner with a deep pantry. By organizing the hubs, we ensure that if a main road is cut off, the community has the internal skills to sustain itself for those first critical 72 hours. We must facilitate a new social contract. The LGU provides the training and the infrastructure, while the community develops its resilience through self-reliance. Security through truth. We must use our local channels to tell the truth by sharing real-time information of what is happening, what to expect, and how communities can better strengthen their capacities. We prevent, for example, panic buying and hoarding that do more damage than the actual shortage. To all my fellow public servants, to everyone present, what can we achieve with the radical shift in mindset? When we retool our offices and mobilize our streets, we ensure three things. First, safety. That the child has water to drink even when the regional pipes fail. Second, security. That our neighborhoods remain peaceful because they know exactly where their next meal is coming from. Third, survival. That as a nation, we remain sovereign and unshakable, no matter what happens in the Strait of Hormuz or how high the thermometer climbs. Our role has changed. We are no longer just administrators of services. We are in a very real sense the guardians of the Republic's stability. Our cities are resilient. The nation is unbreakable. If we are prepared, these converging threats will not be our downfall, but the fire that forges a stronger, more self-reliant people. Let us begin engineering our survival. The national security of our country begins with resilience of our local government units. Before I end, I would just like to share with you that prior to being called up here on stage, I was speaking with Secretary Aluna and President Donald And I asked them if the MAP will be open to collaborate with the City of San Juan for us to build a strong partnership towards resilience. And if the answer is yes, I would like to volunteer my city to be a pilot city for projects of the MAP. I am very much open to this, and prior to becoming mayor, I've had my own political challenges, very tough ones, which have strengthened my resolve to be the best possible mayor of San Juan. And through all of these years, I have learned the importance of partnering with NGOs, organizations outside of government, because government cannot do it alone. We need the help of the private sector, people like you who wish to help us. So just in case you're open, feel free to support the City of San Juan, and it would be an honor to work with all of you. Muli, maraming salamat po, at mabuhay po ang Management Association of the Philippines.
Maraming salamat, Mayor Zamora. Let's give him another warm round of applause, please. Talaga naman, it's really good news to hear that you have chosen the MAP to have a pilot project with you. That is indeed something that the members of the MAP look forward to. And alam mo, Mayor Zamora, kung ano talaga, being head of the League of Cities of the Philippines, if only your kind of leadership, vision, and passion, if only the other LGU heads can also be infected or contaminated by that kind of an attitude, then to a large extent, a great majority of our problems will be at least partly solved. We all know sometimes the problem is not in the national government. Sometimes it starts in the LGU. Now, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you, Mayor Zamora. I'd like to call on a man who actually also does not need any introduction. Before good governance was even spoken, before good governance was in the center of boardrooms and in investment decision, our next distinguished speaker, who was also Management Man of the Year and Secretary of Finance, has been a voice on good governance, and he has been consistently and with great enthusiasm been pushing for it. And now, all that effort, all that hard work was not for naught, because good governance now occupies a very high priority in all board decisions and in all investment decisions by banks, hedge funds, venture capital, etc., etc. He is also the Chair Emeritus of the Institute of Corporate Directors, and he will talk about Business Resilience Framework. My mentor, former Secretary of Finance, the man who can be in the treadmill in the gym, and I've seen it, 1 hour nonstop, Secretary Jess Stanislao.
Good afternoon, everybody. May I start with something very personal? This is the second time I'm speaking before the Management Association of the Philippines in 2 months. So I told Arnold, this is a little bit too much. For a person who is riding into the sunset, I should be doing less, not appearing more before the MAP. But I had originally 3, now 4 reasons why I decided to come. The 4th reason is Mike Toledo introduces you as though you come from the highest heavens. So thank you very much, Mike. Second, of course, is General Oman, with whom I had the privilege of working when he was with the Air Force and the Armed Forces of the Philippines. This gives me an opportunity to reconnect with him. And the third is my dear friend, Rafael Lunan, who has taken on the national resilience cause as his passion, and as his deepest advocacy. And lastly, because a week ago, I had 2 Facebook messages which I read and to which I reacted. One was from Leni Robredo when she announced that she is definitely not running for President of the Philippines in 2028. And she reminded everybody, which is a point that I agree with totally, that perhaps it is time we Filipinos do not think of a single individual who can solve the many problems we have in the Philippines. And the second, of course, was Alex Lacson, who was bemoaning the same decision made by Vico Soto, that he too was not running for any political office in 2028. I guess I came here for the second time this afternoon to underscore one basic point. The problems that we have in this country are not a problem of personalities, although they make things work, worse or better. Our problem is essentially one of systems. The systems that we have been following have been worshiping at the wrong altars, which have brought us to the triple crisis that Rafi Alunan is very concerned about. We talk about our national corruption crisis. When you come to think of it, it is because we have worshipped at the altar of profits and power much more than we have placed the welfare of our people as the top priority. That to me is basic. And unless we address that and come to grips with it and recognize that we have been worshiping at the wrong altar of profits and power, and many times forgetting people, we'll never get out of our corruption crisis. The second, of course, is climate change. Short-termism ahead of sustainability. Who has been thinking about the Philippines 30, 40, 50 years? We've been cutting our forests, dynamiting our seas, abusing our mineral resources. We have given very little importance to the natural gifts God has given us. Instead, we're thinking of our bank accounts, international reserves for the short term. I myself have been teaching economics, University of the Philippines, Center for Research and Communication. And the economics that I've been teaching perhaps has been too short term and forgetting a lot of the sustainability issues that we're grappling with. Unless we address that wrong mindset, we'll never be able to get out of the climate change problem to which we are contributing a great deal. And the third problem we face right now, which is very serious, is the destruction of the old economic and financial order that had been led by the United States. It's gone. It will not come back. It's creating tremendous problems for us and for so many economies right now. But what is at the very core of the problem? This is a problem The chairman of ICD is here, Attorney Dick. The problem is, over these years, we've given much more importance to shareholders and shareholder value, and very little importance to stakeholders, markets, customers, various types of constituencies, and so on. It has been difficult for us in ICD to promote good governance, which gives a lot of emphasis to stakeholder value rather than just shareholder value. It is possible that members of MAP will not correct these three problems we've been facing, which are systemic and which is really at the very root of the problems we have and which raise the question of national resilience. So therefore, when we talk about national resilience, my first proposal is, let's get to the root. What has been wrong? What we've been giving a lot of emphasis to, and not enough emphasis in our thinking, in our acting, in our behaving. So if we're going to get out of the national resilience challenge that we have, the very first thing that we have to address is to accept that our human resource base, according to governance, is our most fundamental economic asset that we have to invest on, that we have to spruce up, equip, give the proper orientation, and make sure that the Filipino is an economic character that can make a lot of difference in a changed industrial and economic environment. So instead of not neglecting people, what we need to do is to extract maximum economic value from the human resource base that we have. I was talking with Admiral Santos, formerly of the Navy, who is now heading a maritime institute in Bataan. It's amazing what that individual is. Building on the Filipino as a human resource, earning a lot of money for the country, and earning a lot of money for himself. Can we do that as a nation? No longer as private sector, public sector, combining together and interacting with one another and partnering with one another, but as Filipinos with a national strategy that is founded on extracting maximum economic value from our human resource base. 120 million Filipinos is a basic market base. We're not given enough importance to them. Can we build an economic model that relies heavily on meeting the basic needs of our own people? But it's not just numbers. It's a question of equipping them, investing in them, orienting them, rewarding them properly, encouraging them, strengthening the good points that Filipino labor has. A second point, national resilience. Can we extract maximum economic value from our natural resources simply by connecting the dots? I'm in touch with people, inventors. Right now, as I speak, there's a Filipino inventor that is getting a global technology certification for his invention, which generates electricity at low cost with no limits whatsoever. Filipino. It has been difficult for him to connect with many organizations just to be able to get this invention to take off. You have quite a lot of small initiatives, for example, about fertilizer. We're concerned about fertilizer. You have Filipino initiatives on the use of waste, on the use of stocks, even for jet fuel that is in short supply. Filipino. it has been very difficult for them to connect the dots. And it's not just a question of connecting private sector and public sector. Rather, institutions working together and say, this is a natural resource base on which we can build, on which we can base our leapfrog national strategy. And the last, of course, is stakeholder value as opposed to shareholders. We're complaining all the time. We've been left behind. We've been left behind because we've not been thinking about markets. We complain, for example, about Indonesia leaving us behind, Vietnam leaving us behind. Which Philippine institutions are thinking about growing together with Indonesia and Vietnam? Can we forge economic partnerships with them? Can we build enterprises together with them? Can we invade into their markets? I'm sure we can. But we're not thinking about market stakeholders and the way how we attract financial support for many of our economic initiatives. So, Secretary Alunan, I hope that you continue with your national resilience movement. But it requires a change in our mindset. First, focus on people rather than on profits and power. Second, focus on our natural resources, how to use them, how to extract maximum economic value from them, instead of very short term. Who do we get to elect in 2028? And lastly, of course, competition on the basis of Filipino quality, Filipino competitiveness, and forging the economic partnerships with new economies that are rising, that are moving into the core, and not focusing too much on the United States, where the sun has begun to set. These are challenges. And it's not just a question of private and public sector partnership. It is a question of every institution, those that are represented here, business or government, coming out with a leapfrog strategy that is based on institutional governance and which really serves and meets the challenges of national resilience. I leave this up with you, and let's get doing and moving and progressing in partnership and solidarity with each other. Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Secretary Stanislao Jess. Let's give him another warm round of applause, please. And just a fair warning, Secretary Jess, this will not be the last time that I think the MAP will be calling you to speak, because definitely you will not be riding in the sunset. Definitely not. Not in the next 30 years. So maraming salamat again, Secretary Jess. And I guess one of the key takeaways for the presentation of Secretary Jess is the fact that we really have to think hard who we will be electing as president of this country in 2028. Talaga pong pag-isipan natin mabuti yan. Dahil nakasalalay po, hindi na yung ating buhay, but buhay ng ating mga anak at mga anak ng ating mga anak. So thank you so much for that that advice, that sage advice, Secretary Jess. And now I would like to call on the man who was actually the reason why I'm the MC today, having MC'd the last GMM and again now. And he is also actually the brain trust behind today's important event. From the very beginning, in one of our first board meetings as the new MAP board of 2026, at the outset, he already said that we must discuss resiliency. We must discuss national resiliency, and we must discuss it in a national framework with the government and the private sector working together. He has been very consistent about this, and that is why we have this meeting now. And I am indeed honored to moderate and to host this event because of this man. He was the former Secretary of the Department of Environment, or rather the DILG, during the time of FBR, of which he did a sterling job. I recall vividly, maybe some of you were not born yet or were still very young, but how he has handled the peace and order situation during that time of the late President Ramos. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me call on our next speaker, the former Secretary of the DILG, Chair of the MAB Committee on National Resilience, who will talk about Community Resilience Framework. Mga kaibigan, palakpakan po natin si Secretary Rafi M. Alunan.
In the interest of time, I'll go straight to my speech. But first, I just want to thank all the guest speakers that we invited. Their erudite speeches have been fantastic. The panel of interrogators who've accepted to interrogate our guest speakers. I'd like to thank also, of course, our GOHAS, guest of honor and speaker, National Security Advisor, Secretary Ed Oban, who had already left for the next meeting, but he left behind Assistant Director General Cornelio Valencia to answer the questions that may be directed at him. So, ADG Valencia, are you here? There you go, okay. And I'd also want to thank the military community, the members of the defense and the security sectors who are here today, who have been quietly behind this effort to push national resilience all the way down to the community level. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. We stand at a precarious crossroads where internal fragility, geopolitical friction, and an escalating climate emergency are no longer separate events, but a singular converging threat. Our survival depends on navigating various distinct yet overlapping fronts. Our most debilitating threats are festering from within. These are our internal fault lines, which basically boils down to crisis of institutions and identity. Socioeconomic inequality is the oxygen that feeds internal instability, leaving a significant portion of the populace vulnerable and exposed to extremist groups and other threats to their safety, security, and well-being. Our institutions are infected by endemic corruption and political dynasties that treat public office as a family estate. Malfeasance and misfeasance result in leakages in the hundreds of billions annually. We're a divided society characterized by shallow partisan politics, a lack of functional awareness, and a thinning sense of patriotism. When we're kept unaware or uninformed, our collective will to defend ourselves is compromised before, as somebody said earlier, a single shot is fired. The second factor are geopolitical factors. And let me focus on the West Philippine Sea flashpoint. We are, whether we like it or not, a frontline state. And the West Philippine Sea is about sovereign rights, access to the Recto Bank's energy reserves, and protein security, meaning our fish. China's 9-dash line directly infringes upon our exclusive economic zone, and its maritime militia, Coast Guard, and PLA ships directly impact our human and ecological security where a full-scale escalation there could decimate our economy. The third is climate change and the Ring of Fire. Apart from natural disasters, we're also facing this year a super El Nino that will worsen our food and water insecurity situation. But here's the kicker. Climate change is the ultimate threat multiplier. As was mentioned earlier, I think it was Secretary Oban, sea level rise is gradually submerging coastal municipalities, and they're the ones that host 60% of our populace. And 90% of our coral reefs face extinction by the middle of this century and permanently collapsing our maritime food chain. The fourth are biological threats and global vulnerability. The scars of COVID-19 pandemic remain a total security breach. I think this was also mentioned by Mayor Francis. It proved that a biological threat could paralyze the country and drain the treasury more effectively than an invading army. It also exposed a critical weakness, the digital and economic divide that leaves rural areas isolated during lockdowns. Our vulnerability is global. For example, the war in Iran is causing severe supply chain shocks, fuel and fertilizer shortages, while over 2 million OFWs are trapped in volatile regions. And we are just one major disruption away from a potential massive humanitarian and economic crisis. And then we have the Taiwan contingency, the developing crisis with China. This crisis has shifted from distant reefs to our northern doorstep. We're at the front lines of the 21st century's most dangerous flashpoint. The first island chain in general, and Taiwan in particular. A conflict in Taiwan would drag us in by geographic necessity and trigger a repatriation nightmare. The path to total defense. Those factors create a triple threat to national economic and human ecological security. To survive, we must move into an era of total defense, which calls for a total reset of our national mindset, requiring hardening infrastructure, transforming our culture, our ugali, eradicating internal rot, modernizing our armed forces. And we cannot view these converging threats in isolation. Strategic resilience is no longer a choice. It's our only path to survival. So I've given you basically the converging threats that call for our attention to community resilience. This is the second part of my presentation today. And I call that the yo-yo mandate. And I attribute that to Mr. Martin Aguda, who I talked to 3 years ago when we discussed the need for community resilience. Yo-yo stands for you're on your own. And it assumes the worst case scenario, where when a sudden shock paralyzes government and the communities are left on their own to fend for themselves. That's what it means. We all live in residential communities, all of us. When we go home tonight, whether you're a general, whether you're a CEO, or whether you're a member of media, we all go home to our neighborhoods. So whatever our status in life is, the reality is that we all return home, be it to a gated or open neighborhood. At this stage in our lives, I'd like to ask the question, given all of the threats that are converging on us. How situationally aware are we? The business community, even the military, media, and other sectors of civil society. How situationally aware are we of the risks we face? The risks we face today and the emergent risks that we will be facing tomorrow. Some of which have already become clear and present dangers. Are we preparing ourselves for another or for the next major disruption? Or is it still business as usual? We need to keep in mind that help won't come immediately or on demand when that future shock comes. It will take time before help reaches us. And this has happened time and again in the past. From experience, experience also tells us that it takes time for us to prepare. We cannot just cram and expect to do things properly after that. We need all the lead time that we can get to get ready. That's why the call to build community resilience is relevant more than ever. Resilient communities are the nation's first line of defense, preserving order before external help arrives. Resilient communities protect the vulnerable when systems fail. They sustain food, water, security, and communications during times of disruption and deter social breakdown. Without resilient communities, the nation will fail. However, our communities must be capacitated by both the local and the national governments to absorb a shock, recover quickly, and bounce forward, transforming them from a state of passive dependence into active stakeholders in national survival, just like our forebears did in World War II. History repeatedly demonstrates that civilizations collapse because internal cohesion eroded first. Community resilience is therefore not merely a disaster management concept. It's a doctrine for national survival. And this is a non-negotiable strategic imperative. And so, this brings us to the yo-yo condition. You're on your own. Community resilience is the strategic answer to the yo-yo reality. It's our insurance policy that ensures safety, security, and survival indefinitely until the proverbial cavalry arrives, if at all. What are the principles and values, the bedrock of resilience? If a community lacks a shared mental model, if we're not all aligned and thinking along the same lines, we will fracture under pressure. And therefore, top priority must be given to the following foundational principles. Number one, subsidiarity, which means that at the lowest level of the community, leaders there, like block leaders, the barangay captains, they're all empowered to make decisions when all else fails. Shared burden and shared benefit. We don't depend on just one person. We depend on each other. Proactive stewardship. We take care of not just ourselves, but our community. Inclusive vigilance. We don't only think about our community, but also the communities around us, especially those who are considered in the peripheries or the marginalized. And of course, this is very, very Filipino, the bayanihan spirit, walang iwanan. And what is the community resilience framework that we're talking about? A community needs a formal resilience framework. It cannot just work on the fly. It's got to have a plan. It's got to have a framework. And it's built on 5 critical pillars, requiring residents to step up and volunteer to ensure their safety, security, and survival. First, command and control. Communities must be properly organized for administration, emergency response, and crisis management with a clear line of succession. Now, that's something that's very basic that we all in the management of Association of the Philippines and those who went through the Institute of Corporate Governance understand. Those are very, very basic management principles. Their state of preparedness will depend on their leadership and collaboration. Number 2, resource sovereignty. The pooling of resources for longer buffers is crucial. For example, home and neighborhood rainwater impounding systems for water security. Without water, after 3 days, we're really in trouble. We can last perhaps for 1 week without food. But 3 days without water, afterwards, we're going to be in deep trouble. Solar systems and generators for energy security. How many people have thought ahead about future energy shutdowns? Blackouts, not brownouts, but blackouts. And are they ready for it? Or converting vacant lots or vacant spaces in their neighborhoods for food security. And how about, if you're anticipating future shortages, how about investing in emergency stockpiles now before it's too late? The next pillar is the security and area control pillar, where conducting audits before organizing is crucial. That's the first step. We must know our residents' demographic profile. We must take a census of human capital and technical resources. We need to map the neighborhood and its surroundings, identify the friendly areas, the risky areas, and areas where we can draw supplies from. The next pillar is health and medical self-sufficiency. Every community must have this mentality of having a quote-unquote field hospital. Tents, oxygen tanks, stockpiles of essential medications and supplies. How about the senior citizens among us? We thought about the shortage of maintenance medicines. In which case, we better start investing in stockpiling such medicines for our survival. Are we training homebound residents, like our kasambahays, like our wives who are not working, in advanced first aid and triage, and to be on call when the need arises? The fifth pillar is social cohesion, the psychological armor. Vulnerability mapping is critical. Knowing exactly where residents at risk are located. Building trust, confidence, and cooperation through regular flows of information, general assemblies, and drills. All of these are so important in developing trust and confidence within each other. Changing our mindsets from one of dependence to one of pro-action is so important. And so, I come to my summary and call to action. The diverse threats we face demand a shift in our consciousness. Our neighborhoods are at the forefront of national security. If we are resilient, malign actors will face a hardened society that's difficult to destabilize. As it has been said time and again by other speakers, acting after the fact is too late. We must act now while there's still some time. Conduct a yo-yo audit. Check your community's mindset, risk awareness level, and their readiness to act. Identify the gaps and bridge quickly, because when our world is suddenly turned upside down, which could happen tomorrow, self-reliance will ensure our survival. So I will close with this very important point, very personal to me as well, and I'm sure to many of you. And when you feel overwhelmed, despite all your efforts, pray the Oratio Imperata for good measure. It really works when we help ourselves struggle for causes higher than our personal interests. Thank you, mabuhay, and may God bless us all.
Maraming salamat, Secretary Alunan. Let's give him a warm applause. And now we go to the part of the program, which I'm sure also is much awaited, and that is the Q&A. May we ask our speakers to please take their seats on stage together with Secretary Alunan, Secretary Stanislao, Secretary Loizaga, Mayor Zamora. Okay, so he has to go to DNR. So please take your seats in front of the stage. And of course, I'd like to introduce to you our distinguished members of the panel. For some reason, they were called interrogators. I don't know why. Maybe because they will be asking hard questions. So as interrogators, they can be like the prosecutorial team of the impeachment trial. They can ask anything they want. So I'd like to call on, and these are distinguished people, by the way. Of course, another lady that does not need any introduction. She's been winning awards left and right. Attorney Maypanera Dick Du Baladad, founding partner and CEO, Du Baladad and Associates, or BDB Law. And my fellow MVP group crony, the president of the PDRF, Mr. Butch Disaster Mailey. He's called Disaster because every time there is a disaster, Butch Mailey is there to make sure that it's mitigated immediately. Our next interrogator is a man who has also distinguished himself in the international and local community as far as crisis mitigation is concerned and resilience. He headed the Philippine Navy before, and we were together during the campaign of then Secretary Gubot Teodoro, but we lost to Pinoy. But if we were given maybe another 7 months, baka nanalo tayo. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Arise Global Board Manager, Consultant for Disaster Resilience, SM Prime Holdings Inc., Vice Admiral Alex P. Mapa. Yeah. PAMA. Okay. And then, of course, my dear friend, also from the MVP Group, he used to head the Metro Pacific Tollways, Management Man of the Year, and former Secretary of the DPWH. Clearly, one of the most honest government officials ever appointed. If he can only be cloned, and perhaps instead of 4 trillion, baka 1 trillion na lang ang nanakawin. Director, Engineering and Development Corporation of the Philippines, EDCOP Secretary, Babe Singson. And my hardworking chair of the MAP Agribusiness Committee. Talaga, when it comes to agriculture, saludo po ako dito. Kaya siguro, he could be the shadow cabinet of Secretary Kiko Laurel, Mr. Oscar A. Turalba. And definitely last but not the least, a respected name in logistics, and we know how important logistics is, especially for an archipelago like ours. He's the chair and CEO, PASIA Trans Procurement and PASIA Shared Services, Mr. Jesus Carlos V. Villaseñor. Partner, magandang hapon. Thank you. Thank you for all of you interrogators for agreeing to interrogate. And as I mentioned earlier, you can ask hard questions to the distinguished panels. There are also microphones on the floor for those who will be asking questions later. We will open, of course, the floor to the audience. And now we go to the Q&A. Let me ask the first question. Since I am the moderator at MC and the rest I give to the interrogators. And this goes to the three distinguished members of the panel. What does national resilience mean in the context of today's economic, social, and environmental challenges? Perhaps just 2 minutes each. And then I pass it on to our interrogators. Oh, you want me to repeat? Okay. What does national resilience mean in the context of today's economic, social, and environmental changes?
My brief answer is national resilience is everything. Because if we need to be ready to deal with all of the consequences of all the disruptions and threats that face society today and those that are still coming. If we are not ready, if I mentioned in my speech, if we're not ready, if the community is not ready, then national resilience fails. Without a national resilience framework for us to follow, it's going to be very difficult also to have unity, solidarity, and cohesion down the line. So it's very important that we have a doctrine on national resilience coming from the top, which can now be cascaded to all the sectors of government and society for us to have an integrated, cohesive approach to total resilience.
Thank you. Secretary Jess?
One of the things that I really fully agreed with President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo was when she adopted the tagline, strong institutions make a strong nation. So when we begin talking about national resilience, we're talking about strengthening the nation. But if you strengthen the nation, you can do that only by strengthening institutions. So the formula towards national resilience is get every business institution, government institution, civil society institution, strengthen itself. I had one example of Rafael Luna the other day, who was giving a speech about national resilience. There were 2 or 3 individuals who were invited to speak, and all of a sudden, somebody disrupts the entire meeting and say, forget about this meeting. That's not national resilience. What we need to do is to band together, think together, and strengthen institutions at whatever level, government, business, civil society, cooperatives, and on that basis, working together, build a strong society and a strong Philippines.
Thank you. Secretary Tony?
So national resilience is really the cornerstone of stability, security, and prosperity for any country. But I think what we don't talk enough about is how resilience is actually deterrence. It's deterrence from internal threats and deterrence from external threats to our own survival as a country. And so when we look at convergent risks such as from social, environmental, political, geopolitical, technological, we need to understand that our existence as a nation is really what is being threatened or what can be strengthened by our common effort.
Thank you so much. And now I pass the floor to our distinguished interrogators. And please just ask the questions, bombs away.
Hi. Good afternoon. We agreed actually that interrogation would be based on alphabetical order. So I am letter B, so I will ask the first question. So good afternoon, guests. You know, in MAP, we have this program called CAMAX, which is a campaign against malnutrition and child stunting. Because we know that stunting is really affecting our future generation from achieving full potential. And therefore, they are actually putting at risk our future human resource, which according to Dr. Jess, he mentioned a while ago, and we all agree, that it is the most valuable asset this country has. Now, in pursuing that program, we found out that the number one issue there that we have to solve would be poverty and food security. Food security would be food availability, food sufficiency, etc., food systems, food production. Now, with this situation that we are here now, wherein there is a disruption in food, in supply chain, increased energy costs, lack of fertilizer production, no sufficient production of food. Our worry is how to feed the whole population of the country. So my question is there a central focus or central group or agency or institution that is focusing on food resiliency and human resource resiliency? Thank you.
Who will answer? Would you like me to answer? So perhaps, I'm no longer in government, but perhaps I can answer your question. Typically, the department in charge is the DA. But I will challenge that a little bit by saying that without ecological security, which means you need the right kind of water supply, you need soils that can actually support food growth, and you need the science to actually make these ingredients work together in order to ensure production. The DNR has a very critical role to play in food security. Climate science is not lodged in any particular body of government as an executive task, okay? The Climate Change Commission is a policy body, basically. And so the legs that it needs in order to implement climate-smart food security programs really comes from the different agencies, including the DOST. I would also prefer that in our academic institutions and universities, climate science has advanced to the point where it can actually support the growth needs for food security of the different regions in our country. Now, whether there's a centralized effort to do this, I would say there is not. But I will also say that the scientific resources are there. The shift in mindset on just food production, I think, is something that has to happen, because at the end of the day, what we need to be looking at is the quality of our soils, the supply of our water that is sustainable and safe, and the impact of atmospheric changes in our climate that will actually deter or actually enable food security to happen in the country. So these atmospheric, land, even ocean conditions, which we don't pay attention to, by the way, I will say that in the DNR, the biggest challenge was more than 80% of our territory is water, but we're only concerned with forests on land. And that is a mind shift that has to happen if we're going to be able to feed our people from protein that comes from the sea in the years to come. So I hope that answers your question, which is, in short, no central agency.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, we felt that when we were pushing for our campaign for malnutrition, we tried to work with several agencies, the SWD, DOH, etc., nutrition, and we found out that they are working in turf. I mean, they don't really coordinate with one another with respect to what they do, but they only look at their own turf.
Dick, if I may follow through, I come from the province of Negros, where during the dictatorship we had the highest percentage of malnutrition. And I belong to the group of the MAP, under the umbrella of CAMAX, where I personally believe that national resilience cannot be met unless we address the health problem that we face, which is stunted development. And as we saw earlier, about 25% of those who are born today are likely to be stunted. It's very difficult to talk about national resilience if we don't get our act together in closing the gaps that disable the nation. In the case of agriculture, for so long, we've been talking about getting our act together to bring down the cost of production. Because we are not competitive compared to other countries. We're not educating our farmers. We're not providing them with technical resources, credit, just about everything that's needed to make a farm profitable is not available. There's no electricity is very high, no fertilizer at times, irrigation is spotty. Unless we cure that, we will perpetually have food insecurity. Our production is getting less and less every year. The land that's being used for food production, every year, some of it is going to real estate development because there's no money to be made in food production. So I think before anything else, when we talk about foundations, when we talk about national resilience, we have to strengthen the pillars that should hold it up, and that's one of them. Making sure that our health pillar covers or addresses the problem of malnutrition, and if it's malnutrition, we need to address the problem of agricultural production, and if that is the case, we have to make sure that agriculture is competitive so that we can improve our food security situation.
Sec Tony, you gave such a great speech on government and private sector working together. It's hard for me to find the question. But I did want to ask you, in your opinion, what are the most serious and perhaps underestimated risks that we're going to face as a country in the future where the government and the private sector can work together, and how would we do so?
Well, I already mentioned the issue of ecological security, and Dr. Jess has mentioned natural resources and the way we don't really manage our natural resources in a way that can be optimized in terms of development. But I think that today, perhaps because we are such an interconnected society, the cyber threats, and I know that I will be asked about that later on, the cyber threats are indeed among the gravest ones. Both infrastructure and operating systems are vulnerable. And what we need to understand is we are creating what we call self-organized criticality in our systems by not knowing the points of fragility in the interconnectedness between our information systems. And I'm not the expert in this area, but I do understand the value in terms of disruption, of disinformation, of spectacle, of imagery, and how that can social engineer certain disruptions in the society. And so I think that there needs to be a lot more investment in looking at the information systems, infrastructure, software, operating systems, the way we handle data, and how that creates what we call organized criticality in terms of our goal towards national resilience.
Thank you.
Naagawan na ako ni Butch, may tatanong ko. No, anyway, good afternoon. One thing difficult to ask is when you have a question to somebody you know who's quite prepared. My question will be a follow-up to Secretary Loizaga. Na-mention niyo na rin ho yung cyber, no? And in the interest of time, I'll just read na lang yung ano, no? Because some of the questions I prepared has actually been answered already during her presentations. So, Madam Secretary, the 2023-2028 Philippine National Security Policy identifies cyber, information, cognitive security is a core national interest. And in the context of looking at resilience, a major cyber attack is indeed going to be a major disaster as well. The three areas that was mentioned earlier by Secretary Tony are primarily areas na pag tinamaan, ubos tayo eh. And if you notice, most of the critical infrastructures are owned by the private sector. So in our discussions now, representing private sector with some agencies in the government, and I'm glad national security and civil defense officers are here, we have noticed a certain gap. And I would like to go on the operational level, Madam Secretary. To go straight to the point, we have noticed that gap, there are very little efforts insofar as being undertaken by the government, to be frank, relative to the DRR sector and the security sector insofar as coming with a harmonized plan to address precisely the effects of a major cyber attack. So if I can be candid in the question of coming up with the right question, what efforts now are being undertaken within or intra-government relative to addressing the cyber attack? Kasi pag tinamaan din ho tayo, it's another big one. I'm asking also the question in the context that moving forward, we are now going to have discussions, the private sector, PDRF, ARISE, and the NRC will be having discussions with the government insofar as coming up with a harmonized national plan on the big ones, not big one anymore. The big ones, both hydromet, geologic, and now this coming clear and present danger of major cyber attack. So yun po, where are we now insofar as the government preparedness toward this? Thank you.
Thanks. So just to answer your question in two ways. The first one is really the primary body that is in charge, okay, of our national cybersecurity issues is the National Cybersecurity Interagency Coordination Council, which is lodged under the Office of the President. So that was created in 2015 precisely to begin to anticipate some of these issues that really are emerging, were emerging then, and of course are today quite present. No? So that body is actually chaired by the Executive Secretary, co-chaired by the National Security Council and the DICT. So I may not be the best person to answer you at the operational level, but if the NSC representative is still here, I think that he may be able to speak directly about the current efforts. I also want to say that, as you know, the DND and AFP IT infrastructure is separate from the whole civilian infrastructure. So that has its own security regime in terms of cybersecurity protection. No? And so I think that the best way to approach it in terms of the private sector would be to approach this particular body, because it integrates all the efforts of the agencies involved. It's an interagency council in terms of cybersecurity and, of course, the ability to confront threats that are now emerging and have actually already occurred. I do think at this point that much has to be understood about the impact of a threat against the cybersecurity of the country. And that has to do with a psychosocial impact on the trust that is the fabric that binds all of us in terms of moving towards national resilience. And this is where it is the most important. Cybersecurity threats have the capability to erode trust. And once that trust is eroded, the vulnerabilities of our society are amplified. And here's where I say social resilience in particular is essential for deterrence. Deterrence from internal threats and external threats. And this is why this idea of really now pushing towards cybersecurity readiness and resilience is at the core of our survival in today's interconnected society.
Thank you.
Well, I think
That's it. Let's give a warm round of applause, please, to our panelists and to our interrogators. I was hoping that Butch Mailey would ask more skating questions, but he was a bit kind today. Maybe he had a nice lunch. Anyway, thank you. Pardon me? A question? Oh yeah, from the we can entertain one question. Of course, Chairman Cora, please.
I will not stand.
No
I can
need.
just sit.
Yeah.
You know, I have a friend who would like very much for people to start using what the researchers in UP Los Baños have already come up with. But more recent, this is Emil Javier, who was president of the University of the Philippines before, but was chancellor of UP Los Baños. We were together in Cornell University, where he was a Rockefeller scholar and where he got his doctorate. But it turned out that there's a discovery or a research project that was done by UP Los Baños, and it's to make a certain fertilizer. And they found out that this is the way to do it because one of the researchers went to Mount Pinatubo and saw that all of a sudden there are grasses all around the area where there was none before. So what they inquired about is, what is this substance that wasn't there before? It turned out it came from Mount Pinatubo when it erupted. And when they started using it, they found out that it's good for rice production. And you don't have to import because everywhere in Mount Pinatubo you have this, what do you call this? Siguro, some soil that came from the... And he convinced one of our schoolmates to invest. And this is Dr. Labadan, who used to be a regent of UP. And the family came out with a factory that's based in Los Baños. And when they started to offer this for sale, they were being blocked by people who are in the fertilizer business. And they were having difficulty. He told me about it when we were having a board meeting of Del Monte. We were together in the Del Monte board. And I said, kasama natin dyan si Titoy Pardo, who might be able to help us because he used to be with the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and should be able to help us because he has connections all over. And true enough, because we also know George Barcelon and other people, we were able to work it out so that the plan of selling throughout the country started to happen. They were able to get government approval and all sorts of this. And so now it's running. And they're able to produce fertilizer for the country. And it's working, okay. What Emil talked to me about, because he knows I'm in the business sector, is if I can find Filipino businessmen with the funding who might be able to look into all these studies that have been done by UP Los Baños and see how they can make them usable for manufacturing and for agriculture. I spoke to one businessman that I know quite well, but he was busy, but I haven't gone back to him. He also wanted to be introduced to Manny Pangilinan because Manny is in, and I kept on saying, sige, later. Kausapin natin. But I have been very busy, I haven't done this. But I was just thinking here, if there are people like Emil who knows all these things, he might be very interested because he was former Secretary of Agriculture. He was also Secretary of Science. So he's one person who can get involved in this, and he's very interested in helping. And he's one person that you might be able to tap. And I can mention this to him because he's my compadre and all that. And he's doing this on his own because he's very conscious of the need for something like this to be done. And there are many studies in UP Los Baños that have not been put into use because nobody even knows that there are things like that except them. So if you can tap him and introduce, the person I spoke to earlier was Ramon Ang, but Ramon is very busy with the airport. So he said, later, Mom, later. Oh, so if you know of others who might be interested, we can tap Emil Javier to do this.
Thank you, Chairman Cora. So, let's keep that in mind, the possibility of Mr. Emil Javier joining the group, the team.
There are some interrogators who they feel gypped, but they haven't asked their question.
Oh, there are 2 interrogators that have not yet asked, or 3. Please proceed.
One shot. For national resilience, I think it's all about predominantly supply chain, right? I was very pleased to see the strategy, the vision that was presented here. My question here, I come from a supply chain management leadership position from Chevron and Caltex. My thinking here is like in the next 2 to 3 years, we're gonna all suffer. And until now, we haven't realized that the problem is supply chain. When I say supply chain, we talk about program review, demand review, supply review, alignment. It's orchestrating the whole value chain to be able to come up with a integrated supply chain planning and execution. What I worry here is like, we don't see that plan evident in any of the government undertakings right now, and we're really running out of time. My prediction here is like by August to September, a lot of SMEs are going to die. As we have seen, many even larger companies are demonstrating low profitability rate right now. So what is the government going to do on this? You know, is there more visibility, transparency? I don't want to hear anymore that we have secured 400,000 or 2 million barrels. The Filipino doesn't understand that on how many sustainable days it could provide us. Maybe it's only 4. We have to be more transparent. We have to be more pragmatic. So I said, who's really in charge? I see government entities working in silos. Nobody is putting this into a cadence. We need to develop it from a operational, tactical, and strategic level. Nobody is in charge. Can we hear something around that particular area? Thank you.
Charlie, question back to us in the business community. What are we doing about it without the government, giving us the guidance? Assume that they haven't thought about it. What are we doing about it? And what are we going to tell the government about what we're doing and what we need from them to make sure that we can do things much better?
I think one comment on this, a follow-up, is like, when I saw the uplift or the organization working around it, I haven't seen a single supply chain professional or leader in that area. But then the problem is supply chain. Somebody who could really put in the DNA of what needs to happen. I'll give you an example. Demand management or demand planning. So who is going to create a sensing system to see how is it really volatilely evolving? And from a supply side, how are we going to cope up with that? Are we going to have more EVs? Are we going to have more solar? Who puts down all of the blockages? Wherein the Filipinos are having a hard time getting permits in LGUs to get their metering system, and nobody is interested already into it. But then nobody's in charge. Everybody wants to do something good, but we're in this particular situation wherein I think we need to get more hard handle on this. Thank you.
I agree.
Secretary Singson, 2 more interrogators, and then we'll ask Secretary Nick Torres and of course Chairman Ben Punubayan to ask questions. Okay, please.
Very quickly, I think my frustration, Tony, you know this. many of you have talked about working together, addressing flooding, addressing bulk water supply for the poor. The solution there is government has to act on a program and policy on integrated water resources management. I still don't see that. I think, Tony, we were working on this when you were with DNR. Unfortunately, I think somehow along the way, it lost its steam. It's really, what do you think should government be doing to address maximizing our God-given water resources every year that causes flooding, which affects the poor, production. We could have conserved that water for irrigation, for bulk water supply, but we've not done so.
Maybe just to add to what Secretary Singson has said. So while I was in government, what we tried to do was, in fact, build what we call the National Natural Resource Geospatial Database. All our natural resources have been mapped, except for those underground, which in fact will require exploration. But in terms of water, all the surface water in the country has been mapped. So what has to be done now in terms of climate change, in terms of our infrastructure capabilities, is really to begin to design where demand is, to speak to the demand side, where demand is, where the underserved and where the unserved are. And in fact, we've already done that. I'm not in government anymore, but we did map this out. And as Secretary Singson knows, there was a very concrete deliverable in terms of integrated water resource management, in the move towards creating either a department or, in the beginning, initially an office, a water resources management office in the DNR. Water impounding is actually one of those interventions. So from small water to the larger facilities, that was all already planned out by the scientists who are working on the supply of water and the climate implications on that supply. So that knowledge actually is lodged in the DNR.
Thank you, Sec Tony. Okay, last three questions. One from the interrogator, Oscar, and then from Nick Torres and from Ben Purumbayan.
To Secretary Stanislao, sir, your thoughts on tax on wealth, or taxing the wealthy to build the resiliency reserve of capacity of local government. Thank you.
To provide enough resources for local governments.
Taxation is a very favorite topic of mine because I used to deal with it. My basic problem about taxation is that we have been caught in an ideological divide. In effect, pitting those that have and those that do not have. That's the traditional economic model. And I think there's a lot of value to be said for it. However, what I would like to suggest is we move away from that old divide of right wing and left wing. As a matter of fact, many of the questions that have been asked here have been about government, what it can do, what it can lead, and that's proper thinking, but probably the traditional model of moving forward. My suggestion is we get away from the business economic model of the divide. Tax the rich to be able to spend on the poor. It sounds very good. It does not really actually address the basic problem. Because the basic problem that we have is not so much the rich accumulating only quite a lot of resources for themselves, and therefore to tax them so that we can have the public sector spend a lot of public services, a lot of goodies that can be distributed to as many of the poor people as possible. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest problems that they have about taxation in order to be able to give quite a lot of goodies to the poor is that we're creating a culture of dependence, which is very different from the economic model of, well, Rafi talks about subsidiarity, taking responsibility from the bottom up, but giving them opportunities to be able to do it. So my approach is, of course we have to help the poor, but instead of giving them quite a lot of goodies, I'd like to use all of that tax money for education, lifelong learning, equipping them with a lot of skills, and having a timeline. The experiences that I have of a 3-year work-study arrangement, which is for 40 years or 50 years, has been amazing. It requires very few resources. It requires quite a lot of effort on the part of the people that you're trying to spend the tax money on, and then it creates unlimited possibilities for them. So my own suggestion, given the question, is let's get away from the old model of tax the rich to spend on the poor. Rather, what can we do together in order to provide long-term economic investment, lifelong learning opportunities for the people so that they can move themselves up. That's a new economic paradigm based on a social orientation doctrine. And that is what I would like our national resilience movement to adopt. Let's get away from the division of the old, which is really dictated by 19th century philosophy. And we did not be caught by them because it leads into very stale and very divisive policies. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, Secretary. And last two questions from General Nick Torres. General, and then after that, Chairman Ben Punumbayan. Okay, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just an observation. General Oban presented the national security policy and the national security strategy as the centerpiece program of our national security and subsequently our national resilience. And Mayor Zamora actually read the definition of national security as defined in the national security policy, which is national security is defined as a state or condition wherein the people's way of life, our government, institutions, welfare, well-being, sovereignty, and everything are protected and enhanced. Looking into that document, we can see that there are 7 elements that was defined. There were 7 elements defined to support, further define and further examine national security. 7 elements are moral and spiritual consensus, cultural cohesiveness, economic solidarity, socio-political stability, environmental protection, territorial integrity, and international harmony. So 7 elements. And I cannot help but notice that the first 5 elements, moral, spiritual consensus, cultural cohesiveness, economic solidarity, socio-political stability, environmental protection, and many of which we are discussing now in detail, are covered by the education. That's why I'm thinking, it appears that we are not doing that much to use or weaponize our curriculum to ensure that our future citizens hindi lang sa nourished siya properly dahil nga ang malnutrition ay ina-address natin ngayon. May isa speaker pa tayo kanina, si Sir pasensya na kanina na diniscuss ang addressing malnutrition among our students. Pero kung mismo ang tinuturo natin, wala yung strengthening the mindset of our people. Because, national resilience is not only fought by the conventional way of fighting it, but also we have to ensure that the citizens that are fighting it are competent, that those values and have those characteristics that will define a strong nation and actually defend and be part at hindi pabigat. Kumbaga sa bayanihan, ang bawat ang bawat elemento ng ating mga citizens ay equipped to carry the house and not pampabigat. So, and it will start with education. And I do believe that education, baka kaninang umaga, kaya ako naisip, dahil kaninang umaga, I was guest of the Boy Scout of the Philippines, and I was surprised that it was not part of the curriculum now. Boy Scout of the Philippines is now a GOCC, and wala na nga yung scouting sa regular curriculum ng ating basic education. So, just a comment, sir, baka pwede nating dagdagan ang ating conversations on national security by also looking into the way we are molding our future generations through education, through the curriculum that we are teaching our people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, General Nick. Very good suggestion. Chairman Ben, please. The last question.
Well, thank you very much. I know we have run out of time, but I just want to express my own thoughts about this. This is maybe a question. I will put the meaning of resilience in another plane, that it is really the capacity and ability to absorb the shocks of disasters and the capacity and ability to regain the previous position and go from there. And I consider part of the disaster is the present banality of corruption. And I would like to thank you really for all your comments and recommendations. And I think you have dealt with the identifications of these disasters and all that, promulgations of systems and processes, and organization of institutions, and the education and training of people who will do all of these things. But I was just wondering, to whom are we addressing all of these comments? I would think it's not to each and every Filipino, because they cannot do these things on their own initiative. I would think that if we want to really get these things done, we have to express it to the person who can do it. Somebody who can put all of the Filipinos together and lead and get these things done. And I would like to hear your comment on that particular matter. Thank you very much.
Yes, here's a comment, yeah. Chairman Ben? Unless there is any comment from the panel to what Chairman Ben said? There being none, there being none, I would just like to congratulate, of course, the members of the panel and thank them. And to our panel of distinguished interrogators, maraming salamat po. And for those who stayed on, thank you so much for staying on and listening to this very lively, up-to-date discussion. Thank you so much. And again, we now adjourn our GMM. And also, happy birthday to Arnold Salvador. Let's greet him a happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday.
May we invite all of our interrogators to please come up on stage for the group photo opportunity. Thank you.